I have an ice maker that refused to power up anymore. If you have this similar model, it's usually found in LGs and whatnot. Um, my three lights, no matter what I did, showed no power. Tried the reset button, made sure the switch was on, went to the refrigerator, plugged it in, unplugged it, took all the regular steps, and then when you get to that point, uh, most of the forums that I've been on or the service places say, it's time to throw this thing out. Uh, I don't like doing that. I figure that there's got to be some sort of fix on it. I looked at the schematic on the back of the refrigerator, and it shows a thermofuse somewhere along the way. Well, I found out where that thermofuse is, and it is on the back where the wiring harness is, tucked right underneath this little piece of plastic here. The one that I have in here right now is a new thermal fuse that I purchased. I bought 10 of them for like $3. The problem with doing it this way though is that it's not protected. When you take this apart, you're going to see a piece of clear like rubber tubing that goes over this entire thing. It's sealed at both ends with crimp connections on both sides. And the reason that is because this is obviously metal here. I'm assuming that this is going to be grounded. You have a hot running through there, so you don't want to have any of this here touching any of this metal. It needs to be almost as good as what you found it as if you're going to attempt to do this yourself. They do make these already sealed. They're more expensive. I think I saw them for like $15 or something like that. You get one of them. You can go that route. I kind of go the cheap route and do it my own way. The biggest thing is when it comes down to how did I know that this was bad? Well, it's like any fuse. You can put an ohm meter across it, and when you put the ohm meter across it, and since it was reading as junk anyway, I figured I'll just go ahead with this and see what happens. Well, I'm taking my little cheap ohm meter here, and what should happen when you go across a fuse is, I'm sorry, my hands are in the way here. When you go across a fuse, you should see the ohm meter jump like that. That means that, hey, my fuse is linked, we're working. When the fuse doesn't, when the fuse is open on one of these thermal fuses, if you were to touch this side, it would do exactly what you see it's doing right there, nothing. So I'd touch it, nothing, touch it, nothing, touch it, nothing. I wish I had my old one to show you that if I touched it, it did nothing, but I don't. But pretend I'm touching it here. That's exactly what you're going to get. That is saying that, hey, our thermal fuse is bad. That's the reason, that's what's stopping the power from going through our hot black wire here, through it, and then turning our ice maker on. Now, what could cause that to go bad? It could be old. It actually may have been doing its job. Maybe it did get higher than 98 degrees centigrade, which is what it's supposed to be tripping at, and it did open up. What I did as a temporary with this here is I took a jumper wire and I put it across to see if it would hold. Now, I used some wire nuts and whatnot, plugged it back in. I don't recommend doing this unless you really know what you're doing with this kind of stuff here. But the fix at the end, though, is you need to get this thermal fuse replaced. As you can see right now, I have a barrel jumper on there. And when you crimp these down, no matter what you do, you want to make sure that they're tight. If you feel any wiggling from this, recrimp it, start over, do it again. You don't want to have a loose connection here. A loose connection is like anything else. It's going to be bad. It's going to heat up. It's probably going to cause another failure, maybe something worse. So just make sure that you're doing good crimpings at the end. So what I ended up doing is I'm using a piece of 1/4-inch shrink tubing, and no, I'm not going to heat this up because that would defeat the purpose of my thermal fuse here. It's a nice tube. I'm going to slide it on over my wire here. And there is a little piece of blue tape on this wiring harness that obviously you're going to have to cut off. But I wanted to make it long enough so that I can slide it over my entire wire. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to recrimp on now another barrel connector on this side here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to push my shrink tubing right back over everything else and tuck it back into the little plastic spot where it belongs. Alright, so I have it completely covered now with the shrink wrap. Both ends are tight. It doesn't wiggle at all when I move it. I can kind of go back and forth and feel you'll feel it if it's not tight. You'll feel it like just kind of give it a little click, 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 click. If it's not tight, you definitely want to have these crimped tight. So make sure you do that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put this back in its spot where it was, because that's the spot you wanted and it's there for a reason. It's measuring the temperature of this tray here. When this little heater heats it up to melt the ice to allow it to pop out, that's what it's really checking for. So it is important to have it in there. Put your screw back in there, screw her down, and you should be, once you get that in there, you should be back in business with your ice maker. It worked for me, and hopefully it'll work for you. Just to let you know, I don't take any responsibility in burning your house down. I have no idea if your problem is going to be the thermistor. I have no idea what your qualifications are. I'm just letting you know what I did for myself. And if it helps you with anything, let me know. All right.